Okay, so last week we talked about thrifting and reselling kitchen utensils, tools, gadgets, all the types of things that you find in kitchen drawers. And there was one category that we kind of skipped over, and so I thought we would talk about that a little bit today, and that is knives. So we're talking knives that you'd use for food prep, and then maybe like steak knives or things like that. So I'm going to put a link in the comments below. I would put the link up above like people do, but I really don't want you clicking away from this video to go watch the utensils video. Well, you can if you want to, obviously. There are 2 utensils videos. I will put the links in the description of this video so that you can check those out as well. So we are going to talk about kitchen knives, and I will admit I am not super diligent about looking at thrift stores in wherever they keep their kitchen knives. You know, Goodwill has them at this point mostly hanging in the bag wall. And honestly, then they tape the blades up so much, it's kind of annoying. And I do kind of, as I'm looking for utensils and flatware, I do kind of glance through the knives to see if anything jumps out at me. There's other thrift stores that have bins where they just kind of dump all the knives together. And I look at them once in a while. I don't always look at them, but it was interesting. It's one of the reasons I love doing videos like this with the research, is that it made me remember some of the knives that we have sold in the past. And I will admit that my husband, I was joking. I was like, should I call you Mr. Pish Posh on the channel? And then I was like, I could even call you Mr. PP. He wasn't very fond of that idea. But anyway, so my husband, when he was thrifting, selling, like I said, he's done this off and on with me over the years, and he's doing it more and more now. But I tend to do more of the thrifting and the sourcing. But when he's thrifting and sourcing, he looks at knives. And so there was a time period we were both thrifting quite a bit, and we sold more knives then because I think he was looking for them more than I was. So I will say I probably do sell more steak knives because they're kind of flatware connected, and a lot of times they're bundled up, or they're in the same locations as flatware, so I tend to kind of come across those. So anyway, this was really good. Like I said, doing these types of research videos, it kind of gets me excited again to look for certain things, and it reminds me of the brands that I knew were good and why they're good and things like that. So I'm going to share that with you. So as a matter of fact, like I said, we have sold knives. A lot of them were like more in the past, but just today, this morning, we sold 3 kitchen knives for $90, and they were damaged. Okay, so we're going to take a look at what brand that was, and definitely want to keep a lookout for that brand. And credit for that sale totally goes to Mr. Pish Posh. He found those at our little bin store outlet center, and they were damaged, but he took a chance on them because of the brand, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So do you sell kitchen knives, or do you look in that section at thrift stores? If you do, what was your best sale? As usual, go ahead and leave a comment below, or leave a question, comment, whatever. All that type of engagement, thumbs up, comments, all of that can help my little channel to grow and to stay. Maybe you share with other people. You know, the more engagement I get with a video, the more it gets shown to other people as well, and the more the channel can possibly grow. So I thank everyone for their support so far. And we are going to go, as usual, we're going to switch over to my computer and take a look at some knives, kitchen knives, that would be good to resell on eBay, Etsy, Mercari, any of those places that maybe possibly you sell. Okay, we'll see you over in the computer in just 1 second. Okay, so I thought we would start off just by looking at the sale that we had this morning that I mentioned in the introduction. So as you can see, the brand is Wusthof, and so we had this lot of 4. So there was 3 knives and there was 1 sharpener. And we sold these knives as is. Here, I'll show you. The damage was on the handle. So let's see if we can get down to the handle pictures. Okay, so we have like, there's cracks in all the handles. Let me click on that. Okay, so there's a crack there and a crack there and a crack there. And then I think if you flip the knives over, there was a crack in that one. So yeah, not in the greatest condition, but knives can be rehandled, right? So it was worth listing these 3 knives. Like I said, my husband, I think, picked these up at just our little outlet bin, so he hardly paid anything for them. And he had listed them at first with another knife from a different brand, and like it was a damaged lot. And we kept getting really low offers on it. But this one, he ended up swapping out. We had this little sharpener that we had, and he threw that in with it, and then just listed the 3 Wusthof knives. And you know, Wusthof does have a program kind of like Cutco where they can replace knives, but I think you do have to provide a fairly good proof of being the original owner of the knives. But there are other places that you can get your knives rehandled. And as far as comparing, if these were in really good condition, and obviously these knives could probably still be used with the cracked handles, right? You wouldn't necessarily have to replace the handles if you didn't want to. So I had asked my husband, like, say these were in good condition, like how much would they sell for? And he's like, the chef's knife could maybe go for, you know, at least $100, if not more. And so it was definitely a good deal to get all 3 knives for $90 plus the sharpener. And then if they wanted to go ahead and get that fix, then they could. Sorry, I'm watching the lighting. I don't know why my lighting keeps changing on this. It happens sometimes. Okay, so Wusthof, definitely a name to look out for. If we go over to our solds, and I kind of did the same thing I did with the utensils video for some of these when there's so many different results. I just clicked on used. I clicked on used, and then I clicked on solds. So all down here is what you can look at. I just put in the name Wusthof, and I went down here and I clicked used, and then I also clicked sold items. Okay, that's where to find that if you're interested. So we have, you know, obviously big lots are going to be the big numbers at the beginning. So a whole set with the knife block is going to do pretty well. We're in the hundreds of dollars here. Now here's a set of 4 steak knives, Grand Prix. It says they're rare, extremely sharp, and they sold for $450-ish in there. Another big kind of a lot. 1 heavy chef's knife, 14-inch, sold for $425. Okay, Grand Prix is like another name, I guess, to look out for. Wusthof Classic Icon 4-piece steak knife in a chest, you know, right around the $400 mark. Wusthof Drizak. Okay, that's, you know, again, it's just looking at what's written on the blade of the knife. Okay, so nice, like sets, a cheese set, $345. And then some of these knives, a butcher knife, right? So it's nice that they have a lot of stuff written on the blade of the knife. So find Wusthof. I mean, most Wusthof is going to be worth picking up. But, you know, then go ahead with the details, look up what it says on the blade of the knife, and you might be surprised that it's one of the higher valued pieces. Okay, so that's a name to look out for. Here's a good picture of internet, seriously. It's snowing today, in case you're wondering. It's snowing. It's March, and it's still snowing, and it's been snowing since November. Anyway, let me just kind of get a close-up on their picture. If my internet, here we go. So it has a trident. You might see that word in listings. That's the mark. That's what that refers to. And as you can see, there is a number 4584. They're identified. The type of knife is identified by that number. It has a measurement on there as well. And Solingen, Germany it's a well-known place for good quality knives and stainless steel and things like that. So anyway, that's kind of what you're looking for. So WORTHPOINT definitely is one to keep an eye out for. Let's move on to another brand that it will not be a surprise, and that's Cutco. We did talk about that in the utensil video, and honestly, that's what I have the more experience, I think, selling with Cutco is the utensils. I think I come across those the most. I don't know that I've really come across Cutco knives unless it's just like a little spreader or something like that. Nothing really major. I think I did one time find a Cutco knife, but it was broken. The blade was completely broken. So I don't know if I still have that or where that is or what. I think we just figured we were just going to list it and let somebody fix it however they want to, but I don't know. It hasn't been listed. It hasn't been sold. It's somewhere around here. Okay, so Cutco knives, obviously the whole big sets. These, we're talking thousands of dollars, right? For a whole big set with the block. I think we saw that one in the utensil video because it's knives plus utensils. Okay, so going down, you know, a lot of times it's worth it. Red. This is only the second time. As I was doing this, I never realized that there were red-handled Cutco knives. It looks like it's called Homemaker. So that is very interesting to me because I've never seen that before. But I saw 2 listings when I was doing the research for this. So yeah, a lot of these are just, you know, big lots of them are going to sell for hundreds, but obviously any Cutco that you can find, and, you know, you don't have to only have a big lot of it. You can, you know, these are table knives, kind of like steak knives. You can sell just one piece at a time as well if you want. Okay, so Cutco, that's kind of a name to always know, right? So some of these brands have different levels. Like the next brand we're going to talk about, which I'll just click over to that, is Henckels. Okay, J.A. Henckels. And, you know, there's different levels to the Henckels knives, and some are going to be better than others. Whereas Cutco, I think pretty much just buy whatever Cutco you find as long as it's fairly cheap. And, you know, some of the utensils aren't going to sell for super high prices. The knives generally do better. Okay, so with Henckels, one thing that we want to look out for is the word zwilling. You can see that right in this first one. This seems to be a fairly rare set. But if we look at this, you know, the ones at the top mostly have that word zwilling in it. So what the deal is with zwilling is that the company is J.A. Henckels. It's Zwilling J.A. Henckels, and they have zwilling as like the top tier, the premium level of their company. And then if it's just J.A. Henckels, it's more of like the entry level type quality of their cutlery. So we want to look for the higher prices. You're going to want to look for zwilling. The word zwilling, I just realized that is in German language, it means twin. And so it has to do with their logo. Some people call it the double man logo. And I will pop over right here and you can see an example. So zwilling is the higher level of the company. and it uses this twin or double man logo. Whereas Henkel's International is just kind of they were looking to expand their audience and to get more affordable options. And so Henkel's International just has the single person. So not completely as sought after if you just see the one dude compared to the double dude, right? Anyway, so if we go back to Henkel's, we're looking for that word zwilling, and it'll be right on the blade. It'll say that, and again, you want to add, you know, here we have zwilling. It also said chronodor. So all that information on the blade you're going to want to include in your listing, and that's going to up, you know, the desirability of your pieces. Okay, so here's some steak knives sold for $250. Again, we're seeing the zwilling. And then if you see any, like these are a lot older, but they're stag or antler horn handles. Okay. This one's kind of a mixed lot. Vintage zwilling. Okay, you can see some prices for just single knives. Is fairly high. Okay, so definitely a name to keep an eye out for. And these first, you know, these first few brands that I'm talking about, these are brands that we have found in the past thrifting and are not going to be completely out of the realm of possibility to find. So Wusthof, Cutco, Henkel's definitely are ones that, you know, are a definite possibility for finding while you're out and about. Not every time, but, you know, over your thrifting career, I'm sure you'd be able to find these brands. Okay. Another one, this isn't the best brand in the world, but it is knives that we've sold in the past, and it's Gerber. Gerber does do some other kinds of knives, not necessarily just for the kitchen. And so you know, it's just a knife brand, and that has extended into the kitchen area. So again, it's kind of big lots of stuff. Gerber and Wusthof mixed together. Henkel's are these high-priced ones. This is a paring knives or steak knives. Gerber Legendary, right? Slicing knife. The knife block. Gerber has walnut handles, so that's a little bit different. And I think what we have found in the past is it looks kind of like this. So it's the Legendary blades, comes in a case like this. I'm trying to think. I think we have found some of the steak knives before. So look for little cases like this when you're out and about thrifting. You never know what's inside. Gerber tools. And then here's some of the steak knives again. So yeah, sets like this are the ones that we've kind of picked up. Like I said, they're not as high a price as some of the other brands, but still, if you get them cheap enough, it's not bad. Okay, so Gerber. And then another similar type of idea is the brand Case. They do a lot of like hunting knives and things like that as well. Butcher knives. So Case, and then you look for it's Case XX. You know, I don't know if they say it a certain way, but I guess Case is the double X on their knives is kind of like their trademark. Anyway, so as you can see, some of the handles on those just kind of look like your average beat up steak knife or knife that you might find in a bin, and they might be worth picking up, right? Early Americans, chef knives, this whole set is about $100. So yeah, this might be something that you come across, especially these wood handled ones that just kind of look like your everyday knife thrown in a bin at a yard sale or a thrift store. But definitely that was a nice one. It's got its original sleeve. So definitely a name to kind of keep in the back of your head, but you know, don't overpay for it either. Okay, so like I said, all these brands, these are things that are possibilities for finding. Now, the next brand I'm going to share with you has been on my husband's bucket list for thrifting knives. And this is a brand that he heard about from not another reseller, but from a friend of ours who just is really into cooking and likes and has mentioned that this is a very nice, high quality knife for using in the kitchen. And so the brand is S-H-U-N. Okay, Shun is what I would guess it is. Japanese. Here's the big numbers for the big sets. Here's an onion slicing knife that sold for big money. Okay. So Shun is definitely a name to kind of keep an eye out for. They have kind of an unusual handle. It just looks like, they just look like really good knives. So see that? Look, it's got a little stand. That's amazing. So Shun is probably a name that you would definitely want to keep an eye out for. We have never found it thrifting. And we will just kind of keep that in the back of our head to keep an eye out for that. Okay. So speaking of Japanese kitchen knives, it's interesting. When I did just a generic search here for kitchen knife and I sorted highest to lowest, and basically a lot of the top names in kitchen knives are Japanese. Okay, so I would just say, and then Cutco obviously, but I would say, like, there's too many names to try to remember what's good and what's bad. And I'm sure there's Japanese, you know, sounding knives that are not great to sell. But what I would do is if I saw a knife and it had a Japanese name on it, I would look it up. Okay. So that's basically the takeaway I wanted to give you for that is if it's a Japanese name on a knife, look it up. Maybe not Ginzu. I don't even know if that's Japanese or if that's just made to sound Japanese, you know. Remember all those infomercials when I was a kid about buying those knives. I guess, and maybe they're good. I don't know. Maybe they would sell okay. But Cutco comes up at the top, Wusthof, right? But a lot of Japanese names come up in kitchen knives, okay? Then this next thing, I just wanted to share the parts of a kitchen knife. I just thought this would maybe be helpful. The website, to give it credit, is FN Sharp. It's a blog. So we have a handle. So this can help you as you're describing the condition of your knife as well. So we have the handle, obviously, the butt down here, the end of the knife. The tang is what I was talking about, where you see the metal goes all the way down the length of the handle. Rivet is what holds the handle and the tang together. Bolster is that part that's between the handle and the blade. The heel is this part of the blade, and then we have the edge of the blade. The flat is the side of the blade. The spine is the top, and then we have the tip, of course, as well. So anyway, I just thought that was kind of a cool little graphic. Nice. Okay, I thought I'd interrupt here too and do a little FAQ like section. Some of the questions that come up when I'm doing videos like this or came up with the utensil video, just a few things that I wanted to just kind of cover before we move on to the next little section. So I'm trying to anticipate some of the questions that I might get. So first of all, no, we do not sharpen our knives that we resell. Basically, we just provide super clear pictures. You're going to want to, I'm going to assume this is my little demo knife. Okay, so you're going to want to try to take as good a picture of the blade as you can. Now this one happens to be new and unused. And so, but if there's any pits or divots or any kind of issue, dings or whatever in the blade, you're going to want to provide real up close pictures of that. And then also of the handle, any kind of issues on the handle, you're going to want to show good pictures of that. While I've got this out, I just wanted to point out, this is one of the signs that I learned a long time ago is a sign of a well-made knife or a potentially more expensive knife, is just the fact that this part, the tang goes all the way through the handle and then is riveted. That can just be, you know, not everything. Honestly, we've been trying to sell this knife for years and it hasn't sold. And so anyway, we're probably asking too much money for it. So we'll try again at some point, but it's vintage and it's unused. I thought it was a no-brainer, but we can't get it to sell. So anywho, I'm going to try another platform for that and see what I can do on that. But that's beside the point. So I'm not saying that just because it has a well-constructed handle that it automatically is going to sell for good money. The brand on this one is Imperial. It's just kind of a, you know, a vintage knife brand. And they did some, yeah, they do other knives too, steak knives and things like that. Okay, so we don't sharpen, we send as is, and we just disclose all the damage. Now shipping, if the knife we're selling is particularly expensive, then yes, we'll use a box. But what my husband ends up doing is he gets cardboard and he wraps the blade in cardboard, kind of a thin, like he said, if he has cardboard that's kind of like the back page or the back cover of a spiral notebook. Anyway, he does that. He wraps the blade, but then he also kind of double wraps it up here, you know, so that it's kind of got double cardboard and double protection on the point. And then, I mean, this one's kind of big. This one probably would go in a box, but if it's, you know, a chef's knife or something like that, then he'll cardboard sheath the blade, and then he will put it also not in a bubble mailer, but in a stay flat envelope, which is cardboard, which is made out of cardboard. So it's kind of got double, the knife isn't going to poke through anywhere. And when he does wrap that in cardboard, he's taping it, and then he's wrapping the cardboard again over the top and taping that as well. And then he does bubble around the handle to protect the handle. And then he says he uses stay flat. If it's more expensive, or if there's more than one knife, then he uses a box. And he said the Priority Mail shoe box actually works really well. And that just goes by weight. So you could even adjust down the box a little bit smaller or whatever you need. But he said generally for most knives, it's a pretty good length that you could use. You could also telescope a couple of those together if you need something a little bit longer, or just make a box however you need to. So then when he's listing, or when we're listing, he tends to do the kitchen knives, but when we're listing, we measure the blade and we measure the handle, and then we go ahead and give the whole length as well. And then like on a chef's knife, he might measure the height or the width or whatever, but just at the widest point. And those are the measurements that he provides for that. Boy. And then any information that's on the blade itself, especially in some of the brands we look at, there's a whole bunch of like terminology and characteristics that are printed right on the knife. So that comes in handy. So go ahead and put as much of that information. If you can't fit it in your title, make sure it's in the listing. So that's just a few little tips that we have found when we're selling kitchen knives. I was talking to my husband because he's my shipper, my packager, and he says, you know, knives are a little kind of tricky to ship. They're a little more labor intensive than flatware or anything like that. Sometimes you do have to make a box. So he really prefers that it's worth it, like not just selling cheap knives, because it's just not worth the time for the shipping, right? Because you have to be a lot more careful. There's certain things we don't mind selling at a lower price, like sewing patterns, certain sewing patterns or flatware, because the shipping is so quick and easy. But if something's a little more labor intensive, we want to make sure it's worth our time to do that. So that is why we put together videos like this and figure out which knives we want to spend our time on. Okay, so back to what we were talking about, which I think at this point we're switching over to talk a little bit more about steak knives and vintage and things like that. Okay, we're back and we're just going to talk a little bit about, just some of the vintage that I've sold. This is it's an old listing on my Etsy shop. And I just wanted to share a couple of the vintage type things. So this is the type of knives and kitchen knives that you might come across at estate sales or yard sales, or, you know, even at thrift stores. And, you know, this is the type that I have noticed, mostly because it's probably, besides the fact it's vintage and I like selling vintage, but, you know, steak knives are usually not far from flatware. They're not much different than flatware. And so I tend to notice those things when I'm at the thrift store or I'm out thrifting. So I just wanted to mention Carvel Hall is a fairly common one that you're going to come across. I see these little knives all over the place. Now, I don't think I would pick them up loose. I probably have. I bet I have some in my stash. But this was a nice, never used in its case, and there was 8 knives, and so I thought that was really cool. And this set did actually sell for $30, so not terrible. And these things like this are easy to ship because they have a nice little case, you know, or box that they can ship in. And let's see, something else I've sold. Okay, so speaking of flatware, this is a very popular flatware pattern, which I talked about in my flatware videos. And the pattern is Twin Star by Oneida. And in, you know, as part of their flatware, they have steak knives as a piece of flatware. And so sometimes they might not be mixed in with the flatware. A lot of people keep their steak knives in a different section, and so might get donated separately or whatever. But these 5 steak knives sold for $50. I'm always happy to find those pieces. I found this little set of steak knives by Dansk, so definitely a brand that you want to keep an eye out for anyway. This set sold for $38. They were made in Japan, so, you know, they weren't connected to any kind of famous Dansk pattern or anything like that, but they were new in box. And so, yeah, they might have gone a little higher, but there was only 4 of them, so I got $38 for those. And then Town and Country, Washington Forge. Yeah, so it's Washington Forge is the brand. And then, why do I have... I think it's what says it on the side, right? So Washington Forge, Town and Country. There's like pattern names, and then there's line names. Town and Country is the cutlery, which is a division of Washington Forge. Okay, that makes sense. And then the pattern or the style of the handle is Fleetwood Designer. So you can see the handle is very mid-century looking. And on the blade, it says Fleetwood Designer. Okay, so it's this is a, you know, I have come across these several times. What was nice was to find the original paperwork, but then also this was in a box and it came with its little wooden holder that you can slide in the drawer. So that's sold for $30. Then these are WMF. It was a cheese utensil set, so it's a cheese slicer, but also has, you know, a couple knives in there as well. And that rustic looking wood handle is fairly popular in other, you know, other brands in flatware as well. And so those 3 pieces sold for $39. WMF Germany is always, you know, it's a good flatware brand to keep an eye out for. So any little pieces that come up that you see WMF is definitely worth taking a look at. And then these are very similar to the Fleetwood Designer ones I showed you before, but these handles are round, and the brand is, or the name of it is Mode Danish. And it says it right on the blade, Mode Danish, stainless, England. And they're just super popular, especially on Etsy with that mid-century look. So I had, I think, 12 of these. I sold them in sets of 6 and got $45 for each set. And these were in really, really good condition. But steak knives. And then we talked in the utensil video about Bakelite handled things. And this was like a carving set, right? So it had the knife and it had the meat fork. And then it had a sharpener, whatever you call it. I wrote it down because my brain doesn't work. A honing steel. And it looks like someone had made this set or this holder for this. It looked homemade. It didn't look like it came that way. So that whole set sold for $48. And then this was a Ruby Lane sale. It sold for $24, and just kind of a simple, the brand was Robinson, Robinson Cutlery Company, and, same thing. It's got the little case to put it in. And I had picked this up, and I think I paid $2 or $3 for it, and it wasn't that long ago, and it actually sold fairly quickly. But when I got it, I was like, oh, I just buy these things because they're vintage, and I can't resist, especially kind of new old stock kind of vintage, right? So I was really happy it sold fairly quickly, and $24 was a decent return on that. Again, these types of things are kind of easy to ship because they have, you just kind of can wrap up. You could even just shrink wrap that little part and then ship it either in a box or, in a stay flat type situation. But anyway, so I was happy with that. So those are the types of knives that I generally end up doing, having more experience with. My husband tends to do more of the kitchen knives, but those are the types of brands that we want to take, we wanted to take a look at. Oh, and I can show you, this is a set that I have listed right now. I just think it's amazing. It does not have a particular brand, but it came in this holder. Okay, so it just has a hook on the back that you can hang on the wall. And it doesn't even look like knives, right? It's just this very mid-century modern type thing. But then when you pull it out, you can pull the knife out. It has stainless on the sides. It's got the wood in the middle, but both sides are stainless. Right? But then it just slips right back in there, but you can just pull them off the wall. So isn't that so cool? I think that's amazing. But I have it listed in Ruby Lane right now. I haven't sold it yet, but it'll sell. I know it will. It just needs to find the right buyer. But anyway, I find stuff like that. So that's what I'm talking about. I tend to get focused on the vintage and steak knives and things like that. So you never know what you might find at estate sales or thrift stores. Sometimes it's wall hanging, things like that. Sometimes it's countertop knife holders that you might want to keep an eye out for as well. So all of that is something that's, anyway, if you think it's worth it to sell the vintage steak knives like that, if you're looking for a bigger return on investment, then maybe the kitchen knives are the better place to go. One other thing I wanted to kind of focus on real quick is the, I'd mentioned this in the utensil video, just the fact that we had sold the little drawer case that goes, what did I look up? What am I looking up? Oh, this is steak knives. Okay, so never mind. I thought I was further along than I was. So this is just, I did a search for steak knives on eBay, highest to lowest. We start out with Cutco. Cutco again in the little case that slides into your drawer. There's a Gerber, like we saw those. This was interesting. Okay, I did highest to lowest. It's all coming back to me now. I did highest to lowest, but I skipped ahead to like a more reasonable price type thing. So the beginning has very, very, very expensive, huge lots and things like that. So I jumped ahead a few pages, and so we're at like the $145 level is kind of where I found us. And this was interesting, Snap-on Tools. They have a steak knife set with a case, and the handle looks like a wrench, right? $125 for that. Cutco, Neiman Marcus wood and brass handled steak knives made in France, $135. Vintage Mac MAC in a gold tone box. That's interesting. Cutco knife, more Cutco. It's just the steak knives. Pampered Chef, okay. We talked about that in the utensil video, just the idea of some of the higher end kitchenware companies also make, you know, flatware and steak knives and utensils and things like that. So Pampered Chef. There's those Snap-on Tools again. That's just like flatware. There's Case again. Cutco. Lots of steak knives. Vintage Queen steel cutlery, stag bone wood handled steak knives. Very interesting. Crown Sheffield. These are Bakelite handled. So these are knives, forks, and some of the big like carving knives. Alrighty, so that's kind of at that level. There's Gerber again. Newbridge, stag antler handle. So that's kind of something to keep in mind as well. Let's see, what was that? Something made in Japan. Kai. Gerber, Queen Cutlery again. Stag. Marvo. Cutco. Anyway, interesting. Yeah, so definitely there can be money made in flatware. In steak knives. You know, they're worth a look up when you find a nice set put together. Okay, so this is, I think, the last thing that I was going to mention was the knife block. So I did a search for Cutco knife block only to give you an idea. And basically what we have found, knife blocks used to be one of our kind of bread and butter things that we did when we first started reselling. And we kind of tried to stick with those brands like Cutco or Wusthof or Henkel's. They're a little harder to find now. I think I feel like I found them a lot more back then. But maybe I was looking harder, so I don't know. Cutco, one thing we learned with knife blocks was the more slots, the better prices that you're going to get. So some of these larger Cutco knife blocks, as you can see, are in like the hundreds. The Homemaker one is a popular one, it looks like. So Cutco is definitely like a $50 for the basic one. Looks like you're going to get about $50. And then it goes down from there, right? Depending on condition and depending on what people ask. Sometimes people just don't know to ask more, right? So same thing if you look at Wusthof, you know, they don't start off super high. That one's got 25 slots and it only sold for 50. But if you can get them for a fairly good price, then I would go ahead and grab them, right? Wusthof especially, if you can get it cheap enough. And then last one, I just wanted to say probably not to worry about the Cutco knife, the drawer holders, especially just these plastic ones. You're looking right around the $15 to $20, you know, $22 for 2 of them. I wouldn't worry about these so much. I have sold them in the past, but basically because I thrifted them and then just went ahead and had to try to get my money back. So just because it says Cutco, you know, doesn't make it an automatic high seller. So these are drawer, they can go in the drawer, they can also hang on the wall. So there's some older ones and you would think that they would sell pretty high, but they don't. So just something to keep in mind. Don't get super excited if you see the cases. Now, if you see the cases and you have knives to put in them, or they come with the knives in them, then of course go for that. So anyway, let's go back to just the regular camera and we'll finish up this video. Okay, everybody, so that's it for kitchen knives for today. Thanks so much again for watching. And like I said earlier, at the beginning of the video to go ahead and leave your comments down below, or leave your, you know, what did I miss? Is there something I missed? Is there a knife that you sell or that you particularly look for, or any other kind of details like that? And then also, I guess what's coming up next on the channel is the What Sold on Tuesday. And then, wow, I think my camera's falling apart. Anyway, What Sold on Tuesday. And then what I was thinking for later on in the week is I'm putting together my thrifting bucket list. It's kind of always just been, you know, a mental bucket list of things that I'm always on the lookout for and either haven't found yet in my years and years of thrifting, or I have found something kind of like it, or just a little piece of it, and I would like to find more. So I'm just going to share some of those fun things with you, and that'll be out later next week. So hopefully you guys are having a wonderful weekend, and thanks so much for watching.